So, this is just a little expository experiment, little path on the side or vague or divagation. Gilbert and George say that, or they actually advise the young Hans Ulrich Obrist, the future curator or one who's supposed to care for what we call art, uh, never to clarify misunderstandings. So I think that's a very radical thing if taken as something that a respectable person can take seriously. To think about it. So, for instance, somebody says to you, well, okay, I'll give a recent example. Somebody says to me, Bob Dylan and Meatloaf and Beethoven all can be analyzed as musicians, and then sort of as proof of the grammar of the word musician, I feel necessary to bring in this question of what I call personality, but I think it could also be called human differences. So I think that the 6 different types, or 12 if you divide them between male and female, of the Olympian gods. So the Olympian gods are supposed to be divided from um, the Titans or the cosmic gods. So that the cosmic gods is things like time, Chronos, and the Gaia, on the earth, and things like that nature. But the Olympian gods all have to do with personalities of human beings. So, for instance, Zeus is illustrated in Iliad by the overbearing Agamemnon. Achilles says Agamemnon is this type of guy that wins wars of words, but nobody is satisfied with his victory. They don't think he's really won. They're resentful, let's say. So, like Achilles, sometimes Achilles is represented as sulking in his tents, waiting for his mother to come and soothe him. Silver shod Nerod, one of the daughters of Poseidon, to come forward and tell him that he could be very great as long as he's willing to die at a young age, Achilles. But he can't win wars of words as Agamemnon can in council. So I think the Olympian gods show these qualities of human beings, which are demonstrable as much today as they were in the archaic period when the Iliad was sort of underway as a literate practice of a warrior culture. Again, to go back to the first beginning of the statement, we have this question of whether one should clarify misconceptions in discussion. The question that's ultimate above this is whether there can be an answer to this question which could go for all human beings, and which could determine which is worthy of the dignity of a human being. So it's a big subject of Samuel Moyn, for instance, as dignity talk. How dignity talk has come in with capitalism, and especially through the Catholic Church and the encyclicals of the Catholic Church. Whether it's commensurate with the dignity of a human being to ignore the moral demand to perfect the human being through the constant demand for clarification about what the grammar of language is in the Wittgenstein's sense. So let me just very quickly, Wittgenstein has said if somebody were to say of one of Bach's finest pieces of music which have a religious tone to them, that music was delightful. He would say, I wouldn't have said delightful. I wouldn't have used that grammar. I would have said glorious. I would have, and it's Wittgenstein says if one were then to ask what the distinction between the concept of the glorious and the concept of the delightful is, that would be a grammatical question. So this is how Wittgenstein understands grammar. So within this understanding, one can pose this question of whether it's commensurate with the dignity. So we have this concept of dignity of a human being to ignore misunderstandings. So somebody says, for instance, this thing about Bob Dylan, Meatloaf, Beethoven, this is all music, etc. And then personally I have the prejudice where I feel compelled, not because of the dignity question, but simply for its own right, to say that Bob Dylan, I would say very similar to David Lynch. So I think of David Lynch, Lost Highway. It's very hypnotic, enjoyable. One can catch hold of the thing and be drawn along with it. It takes one into, it stares back into one a bit and makes one drunk. And this is a very nice thing. Okay, Bob Dylan. And then in addition, Bob Dylan is connected to the 60s and the whole movement, and he's a kind of a iconic figure or a symbolic figure. I get that. But that's not the question. The question is whether this is worthy of the dignity of a human being to take seriously this music. And then I say to myself, no. But then now this is the most important. This is the thing which I had a discussion with somebody recently where I didn't clarify it, and then I thought to myself, well, is this Hans Ulrich Oberst not needing to clarify such things really good thing? I think for me, I feel a kind of passion, but not necessarily a rational, clear, free decision against that, because I think my instinct is that one should say the reason it's not that I'm against say Meatloaf versus Beethoven, because it's classical music versus some other kind of music. That's not the issue. The issue is the human being involved. I just think that Bob Dylan is if he made classical music, it would suck. So it's like it wouldn't be the best classical music. I just think it's the human issue which is involved for me. It's not the issue of classical versus, or even the Adorno issue of classical versus this weak, repetitive, sort of fractal style of H.R. Richardson style of H.R. Richardson, who developed the fractal prior to Mandelbrot, but he didn't get the credit, as often happens in academia. But style of there's just a weight of seriousness, or there's like this midget state, which is lame. So but then I'm slightly again, I'll point out that I'm slightly vexed about that because I think Hermann Hesse, who won the Nobel Prize, is probably his self-admitted to be a prince rather than an emperor. Goethe he puts as an emperor, but also Dostoevsky, of course, would be an emperor, except that Zizek doesn't admit it because his spiritually, Zizek is a total imbecile spiritually. But I take Zizek seriously because I think maybe Dugin also has some things that he doesn't see properly, and maybe the Russians as a whole don't have some things that they don't see properly. But anyway, so that's just some little adventures and thoughts.